In 2004, the average lifespan was 11.3 years. In 2014, it was 10.3 years. Dogs lost a year of their lives in a decade. So here's a shocker. Onions are good for dogs. I'm not talking about feeding your dog onions, though. I'm talking about peeling back the onion of commercial pets. Peeling back the onion once made us think that kibble cleaned their teeth, right? That raw was responsible for the recalls to pathogenic bacteria, and that grain-free was at the heart of DCM. We're going to peel back that onion a little bit more today, and I have to say, I'm super glad my friend Debbie is not here. So I'm going to talk about her. This is Colton. He's my friend Debbie's dog. And when I suggested to Deb that Colton was a little disproportionate, she said, I know. It has a small head. I rescued Colton and placed him with Deb 10 years ago. And now Debbie and I have known each other since the 6th grade. So we can have personally sensitive conversations, right? You get me? She texted me in the middle of the night a while back, and this was her question. It's very standard family. We would talk about farting. So as I thought about my reply to Deb, her text was blessedly followed by another. Colton. But as many people in this room know, conversations about pet food can be kind of like farting, right? And you don't have them because it's part, but you don't do it because it's personal. There could be some finger pointing, and let's face it, both of them can pretty much stink up a room. So despite my job and my friendship with Deb, Colton lived the first 10 years of his life on carbohydrate-rich and processed food, otherwise known as crap. So it's no surprise that he's got ECH or a small head. Everything's connected to everything. This is Dr. Nate Heilman. He's one of the foremost practicing integrative veterinarians of our time, a thought leader, a teacher to other veterinarians. He's also the vet who provided the design to the food that we make. And in a letter to veterinarians with his colleagues when he introduced our food to them, he said this: practicing holistic medicine without excellent nutrition in place is like sailing into a strong headwind. Right? Holistic medicine, that art and science of holism, is about the whole. Food can either initiate and perpetuate disease or it can heal and promote health and well-being. And as all of us in this room can appreciate, lifespan and health span are super important, and it's okay to be greedy, right? We want both of those things. We want our dogs to die young after a long, long time. Metabolic health is the essential pillar of longevity. Here's a question for you. Do you think dogs are living longer today than they did a decade or two ago? Right? UK Kennel Club did a study, they do a study every 10 years of thousands of dogs, and you might have seen this one. In 2004, the average lifespan was 11.3 years. In 2014, it was 10.3 years. Dogs lost a year of their lives in a decade. And Mars, this year, just came out with their own study. They looked at over 13 million dogs, visiting over 1,000 of their Banfield hospitals, and said that the average age at the time of death was 10.6 years. This is the United States, right? Not too far out from that figure. And the Association for Pet Obesity Prevention says, yeah, we get it, right? Our dogs are fat and they're getting fatter. 2022 figure came out and said 59% of our dogs and 61% of our cats are considered overweight or obese. You know what's scarier for me? But two things. Number one, nearly a third of us look at our overweight dog or cat and we think, they look perfectly normal, right? They have a small head. We've normalized obesity. And then the second thing is the 1, 2, 3. And it says of the parents of us who have tried to get their pet to lose weight, they've tried measuring their food, counting their calories, and increasing exercise, right? Diet and exercise. Yet still, it appears by this trend, we've failed to get our pets to lose weight. So to me, that says that there's something happening in the bowl and something happening in the body that's undermining our efforts. And we're going to get to that. But first of all, why is weight so important? Back to Mars. They looked at 50,000 patients visiting 900 of their Banfield hospitals and correlated lifespan to body condition. And the green line right there is the lifespan for overweight dogs. The blue line is the lifespan for dogs of a normal weight. Overweight dogs don't live as long. So what's happening in the body? There's a condition, a vicious cycle of disease called metabolic syndrome. It's a cluster of biochemical and physiological abnormalities that put a body at risk for obesity, type 2 diabetes, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, cardiovascular disease, as well as several other diseases that can lead to cancer. Conventionally speaking, there are 5 key indicators of metabolic syndrome, right? Excess body fat, high blood sugar, high blood pressure, high triglycerides, and abnormal cholesterol levels. We can start to add gut dysbiosis to that list. So it turns out, our adipose tissue, let's talk about that first. That's fat tissue, right? It's not this thing that we used to think about as a piece of luggage that we carried around for the day we decided we're gonna go run a marathon today, right? Fat tissue is a massive organ in the endocrine system. It has the biological repertoire for storing and releasing energy and the metabolic machinery to communicate with distant organs in the brain. It is intricately tied into this thing that we know as the gut-brain axis and connects with our immune system, our neurologic system, our endocrine system. In fat, and paradoxically fat bodies, there are more pro-inflammatory substances floating around that cause insulin resistance. What's paradoxically fat, right? It's when you're deconditioned, when there's more fat in your body than there's, say, muscle, right? So fat or paradoxically fat. What are those pro-inflammatory substances? Well, they're things like hormones, free fatty acids, and cytokines, which are little proteins responsible for cell signaling. And what's insulin resistance? Well, insulin is the hormone that's made in the beta cells of the pancreas, and its job is to lower blood sugar. So when you eat, blood sugar rises, right? And your pancreas releases insulin, which attaches itself to little receptors on your cells and tells those cells to take up that sugar and store it as glycogen, like in your liver and your muscles. Resistance is when those cells don't respond like they should and don't take up that blood sugar, consequently, the sugar from your blood. Consequently, blood sugar rises. And high blood sugar damages blood vessels. It damages the blood vessels in your brain. You get cognition, mood, behavioral disorders. It damages the blood vessels in your eyes and give vision problems. It damages the blood vessels that feed the little nerves throughout your body to get neuropathy. It damages the blood vessels that feed your kidneys and the nephrons, those little filters in your kidneys, and you get kidney disease. Your endothelial cells are the little cells that line your blood vessels, right? And they're responsible for things like blood pressure and exchanging substances with your tissues and your immune system, right? So protection of those is super important. So when you have high blood sugar, right, and nowhere for it to go, it's not going to be stored in your muscles, what happens? Your body wants to store its fat. So it's going to store it as fat in your liver. You're going to get non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. It's going to store it, which puts your body at risk for liver cancer, right? It also starts to dysregulate things like bile acids. And then it wants to store it as, I don't know, fat in your belly, right? Fat around your organs. So you were once somewhat overweight with inflammatory substances floating around. Now you're more overweight. You got more inflammatory substances floating around, right? Some of these things start to dysregulate other stuff, like the way your body creates and breaks down fat. So you start to have more fatty acids floating around. You start to have more triglycerides, more cholesterol. We know what happens when cholesterol's in our bloodstream, right? Builds up plaques. We get high blood pressure, hypertension, atherosclerosis, right? But it doesn't end there. In overweight bodies, oxidative stress increases in a reciprocal way. What's oxidative stress? It's when the insults to a cell overwhelm that cell's antioxidant power, right? It's about its power to fight it off. Well, what kind of insults? Pollution, mold, food additives, right? These are things that our cells have to detox and figure out what to do with and shuffle out. And when those insults overwhelm our cells, we start to have cell damage, we can start to have cell death. And this is at the root of chronic disease, like cancer. And it doesn't end there. This virtual organ is also affected. Microbiome, right? Connected to health in a multifaceted and fascinating way. So for a second, I just want you to contemplate the person sitting on either side of you, right? You can give them a wave, give them a wink, peace sign, whatever. They just sit quietly there but acknowledge their presence, right? Now realize that you're sitting next to somebody that's holding 2.5 pounds of bugs. 100 trillion of them. You too. There are, in the gut microbiome of dogs, about 3 predominant phyla. In humans, 4. What's a phylum? Right? It's an example would be like sea sponges in humans, right? 2 phyla in the animal kingdom, so wildly diverse, right? And these guys influence so many things, right? They influence our preferences, our urges, what we want to do. Do we want to take a nap? We want to go for a run? Do we want sweet or savory, soft or hard, cold or hot, right? They influence how you play, dance, sleep, what you think. So moms and dads, here it is, just a little public service announcement from your dog there at home. We often think of these guys, these bugs, right, in 2 buckets, right, good and bad. And that's a very limited way of thinking of them, and it's not really accurate. The way I like to think about them, right, is a rainbow. You kind of need all of them, right, but some more than others, right? You can't have a rainbow without purple, but you really do, healthy rainbows have more red, orange, and yellow than they do purple. So I'm going to use that analogy as we talk about this today. So these guys in that rainbow of our microbiome, right, they can influence a lot of things, right? Science has shown that a single one of them can influence, can modulate gene expression that involves nutrient absorption, right, what we get out of our food, mucosal barrier fortification, our gut and how healthy it is, right? That xenobiotic metabolism that I talked about, which is when you have oxidative stress, right, those insults to your cell. That's an example of xenobiotic metabolism. Intestinal maturation and immune system development and education. So in a healthy gut, right, you've got a good looking rainbow. You got a good balance of things. And the gates, those cellular junctions, are tight. It turns out, however, that when we're overweight, right, the fatter you are, the more fragile the lining of your gut is. And it becomes leaky, and stuff seeps out in systemic circulation, and not only causes inflammation, but a dysregulation of all those cell signals. In any acute or chronic disease state, the microbiome is altered. And when you alter what is in that, what species are in that microbiome, you alter the things that it uses and the things that it produces. You alter things like amino acids, vitamins, hormones like serotonin, that feel-good hormone, and something super important called short-chain fatty acids. I'm going to talk about 2 of them a little bit more, but butyrate and procreamine. So what happens I'm going to give you some examples of how the gut and the diet connects to metabolic health, right? We know in any kind of low-grade gut inflammation, it can induce insulin resistance. We know that prey diets for dogs can disrupt that rainbow, right? We have to see a decrease in the number of species there that digest plant fiber. And these guys are really super important for things. They help produce those short-chain fatty acids that are responsible for our metabolic health and responsible for our immune health. This could be one reason why we see raw-fed dogs with hypersensitivities and allergies, right? Because they're missing these bacteria that make these short-chain fatty acids. We know in humans and in mice, we don't yet know this about dogs, but in high-fat, low-fiber diets, we can get, again, a disruption in that rainbow, a leaky gut. And that when those diets exist for generations, that change can become permanent. You know that from mice, right? So that no amount of fiber that you put in your diet is going to fix the problem. Conversely, we know that high-fiber diets can result in a decrease in hunger feelings and food cravings. We know that overeating is an imbalance between the eat and do not eat signals in the brain, right? And those things are modified by, guess what? Short-chain fatty acids. Hormones like leptin, which occurs in our fat, and stress mediators like cortisol. We know that starch, sugar, and fat make us crave more of those things in a insidious little feedback mechanism, and that a mom's dietary choices while she's pregnant and those made for her kid in those first several months of life can influence that little body, that little being's appetite and preferences for their lifetime. We know that time-restricted eating can be a really good thing for a number of reasons. It can help us prevent insulin resistance. It can improve our metabolic rate. It can connect us to the circadian rhythm. It can decrease our blood pressure. And it can help us make those short-chain fatty acids, or support the development of the making of those. We also know, unfortunately, we have endotoxin in our gut. I mean, it's just natural. It comes from gram-negative bacteria. But when our gut is leaky, that stuff seeps out. And it goes again into circulation, causes inflammation, dysregulation of cell signaling everywhere, including the brain. And when it happens, central satiety mechanisms drop, so you eat because you don't feel full. Appetite preferences shift in favor of high-fat foods, and your body slips into this cycle of disease that favors the development of obesity. So why was Colton so fat, yeasty, and itchy? Like, this problem was really just overnutrition, right? Inflammation. You put him on a species-appropriate, low glycemic diet, you're going to fix Colton's problem. But we have raw-fed dogs who have hypersensitivities and allergies. And lactobacillus and bacteroides, for instance, are two species that can be missing in dogs on raw, because these bacteria eat plants. And when those things aren't in the diet, then those species die. And when they die, they're not there making those short-chain fatty acids that do so many good things for us, right? They can reduce our hunger cravings. They can help convert, here's a really cool one, they can help convert white fat cells to more metabolically active brown fat cells, which would drive weight loss. Then they help us with our immune system. They can reduce inflammation and oxidative stress. So that's what happens in the body, right? Now let's talk about what happens in the bowl. This is kind of the Cliff Note version, and I kind of go through this kind of like it had a lot to share. But number one, macronutrient imbalances, right? When you eat crap, you're eating a lot of starch, and starch fuels inflammation of the stomach, colon, ears, respiratory lining, and weight gain. It makes you gain weight. The connection between the gut, the brain, fat, and hormones like insulin and leptin is short-circuited by starch. Leptin resistance can develop. And that's when you eat and eat and eat because you just don't feel full. Gluten is also found in a lot of starchy foods. Why is gluten bad? Zonulin. Zonulin is a sole node opener of the tight junctions in the gut wall, and only two things tell the body to release zonulin: bad bacteria and gluten. A large study was done by industry trade associations in 2020, and it looked at 1,235 dog foods and 574 cat foods. This represents about 90% of the market. These are the ingredients that go into them. I have the cat one at my booth. I'm only going to talk about the dog one today. But imagine that these ingredients go into one ginormous bowl that our dogs eat out of, right? The number one ingredient that they found, corn, right? Followed by a rendered meat and bone meal, followed by chicken of undisclosed quality, soy, water, more chicken byproducts, more corn. The median values reported on a dry matter basis for kibble were nearly equal parts crude protein and carbs. And the researchers reported that the corn, soy, and rendered byproducts make up 90% of what goes into commercial pet food. And here's a good one. So 8.65 million tons of ingredients that go into pet food, right? Guess how much is a green leafy vegetable? 0.05%. Right? Any conversation, however, about imbalanced eating also has to talk about water, rather, or the lack of it. What we eat, about 75% water. If our dogs are eating dry food, it's about 10%. So chronic dehydration causes a lot of really crappy stuff, right? Indigestion, because our dog's stomachs need a lot of water to make gastric juice to digest protein. And when they don't get it, they can get indigestion. Things can ferment. You can start to get food sensitivities because of that. Thank you, Dr. Katie Kangas, for that lesson at AHVMA. Yay! You have reduced metabolic rate, right? The bioaccumulation of toxins, lethargy, mood, behavioral disorders. You can get gum disease and tooth decay, which can put you at risk for cardiovascular disease. You get puts you at risk of chronic kidney disease. UTIs, kidney stones, and more. Number 2, chemical load. I'm going to talk about only one chemical, but I encourage you to go check out Truth About Pet Food, Susan Thixton, for, round of applause for Susan. She, heavy metals, phosphine gas, and she uncovers the dirt. Speaking of dirt, and what goes on our dirt, well, glyphosate, aka Roundup, right? Was approved for use in 1974, and use is accelerated with the advent of GMOs. Nearly a third of U.S. cropland is treated with glyphosate, some 300 million acres. The permissible level, it's used now on many crops, not just GMOs, but as a desiccant to ripen them just before harvest. The permissible levels for humans in the United States is 6 times higher than what it is in Europe, and 3.5 times higher than what it is in Canada. 13 researchers out of Europe in late 2021 found that glyphosate administered within Europe's acceptable daily intake, so 1/6 of ours, right, disrupted the balance of gut bacteria through the same pathway it destroys weeds. It is the pesticide of the microbiome. About that same time, a smaller group of researchers, also out of Europe, found that nearly half of the core species of the human gut microbiome is sensitive to glyphosate, whereas pathogenic bacteria, E. coli, Salmonella, is particularly glyphosate resistant. And then in 2014, or before this study, but in 2014, a large correlational study was done. And it looked at glyphosate application data and GMO crop data and disease epidemiological data, and it plotted this information in time series data sets. You're going to see very shortly red and blue lines go up that indicate glyphosate and GMO usage, and bars that indicate the presence of disease. A 1 is a perfect correlation. They found high correlations between glyphosate and over 20 chronic diseases, including 6 types of cancer, of the thyroid, liver, bladder, pancreas, this one there, but myeloid leukemia. They also found correlations with diabetes, chronic kidney disease, obesity, lipoprotein metabolism disorder, intestinal infections, inflammatory bowel disease, dementia, Alzheimer's, autism, stroke, hypertension, and more. I think that's how Monsanto feels about me. So how much glyphosate do our dogs consume? Well, Health Research Institute is a lab that conducts testing based upon a urine sample. You can contact them, get a test kit, and test your own dog. They report that the average dog has 32 times more glyphosate in their urine than the average human, right? So dogs will probably, if they have outdoor exposures, will probably always have higher levels than we do, right? We don't normally sniff and roll in grass or drink out of puddles without tequila or two. So, but Dr. Erin Bannock is one of 3 practicing integrated veterinary oncologists in the U.S., and she has a goal for her patients of 2 parts per billion. And I have super news, because this is really easy to get. My dogs test around 1. And it's basically a matter of either choosing organic, if you're going to feed these ingredients, or avoiding them altogether. This accounts for about 85% of the glyphosate used in the country. And if you add cotton and grapes to that mix, you'll account for pretty much all of it. Toxins from ultra-processing. These are your Ages and ales, right? Advanced glycation end products, advanced lipoxidation end products. These things, we make them in our body, and we ingest them in the foods we eat. They also occur in dry storage, like of kibble and can. They are a diverse group of highly oxidative compounds with pathogenic significance in age, chronic disease. They're tightly tied to metabolic syndrome and diet-related pathologies. In the body, we make these things, unfortunately, we make more of these things, let's just say, if we're hyperglycemic or high cholesterol levels, because our body uses those things to make more of this stuff. They are mutagenic, carcinogenic, cytotoxic, genotoxic, right? Really bad stuff. They are particularly damaging to the beta cells in our pancreas and to our kidneys. And when you have insulin resistance coupled with impaired function of the beta cells in your pancreas, you have diabetes. Omega-6s and omega-3s can degrade into these things, into ales, right? It can be activated or catabolized by saturated fats. But before you run out and get worried about the fish oil that you're putting into your dog's meals, omega-3s are really good, right? They do a lot of stuff for us. And we're recognizing that our dogs can be deficient in them. So I would encourage you to get, you can buy a sample kit or a test kit from Omega Quant and bring it to your next vet appointment. You can test your levels from a blood draw. So how much H's and L's do our dogs consume? Mars did a study. They found that the average dog, H&F is a particular kind of age, and they found that dogs eating kibble on a body weight basis had 122 times the exposure as we did. And if they ate canned food, it was 169 times. Synthetics. This is a sleeper subject. Like, we don't really talk about synthetics so much and what the things are in how they affect us metabolically. But there are bioaccumulation, bioavailability, dosages, interactions, and consistency problems with synthetics. There are 38 nutrients that make up the ALFCO complete and balanced profile, and only 6 of them have upper limits. 13% by tonnage of what goes into pet food is an additive. Like, that's a lot of stuff we've got to detox, right? Our dogs have to detox. I've highlighted 5 synthetics as they relate to metabolic health. First, phosphorus. Synthetic phosphorus is used widely in pet food. The highest levels are in puppy food in all life stages. And in long-term use, it's associated with kidney damage. Natural phosphorus is found in meat and bone, right? Bioavailability of natural phosphorus is about 40 to 60%. Synthetic phosphorus has a bioavailability of about 80 to over 100%. And studies have shown that when our dogs ingest synthetic phosphorus, unlike natural phosphorus, phosphorus increases in their circulation in their bloodstream, and so does parathyroid hormone. And why is that important? Phosphorus, hyperphosphatemia can cause calcification of the soft tissues of their kidneys and blood vessels. And parathyroid hormone is important because it activates vitamin D in the kidneys, and vitamin D can put calcium into circulation. And hypercalcemia, or excess parathyroid hormone, can cause, or is correlated to insulin resistance, right? Increased free fatty acids, sodium retention, and high blood pressure. Choline. Choline's in eggs, right? Pretty easy to get choline. Study looked at choline from eggs compared to synthetic forms of choline and found that the synthetic, but not the natural, once ingested, rapidly produced TMAO. What's that? It's a toxin. It's made in the gut, and it's responsible for glucose intolerance. It can cause inflammation of our fat tissues, impaired signaling of insulin in our liver, disruption of bile acids and cholesterol, and damage to our blood vessels. It is a suspected trigger of type 2 diabetes and a known trigger of adverse events, including death in chronic kidney disease cases, cardiovascular disease cases. Vitamin D deficiency is associated with metabolic dysfunction, immune dysfunction, and cancer. In metabolic dysfunction, it can look like high blood sugar, high cholesterol, right? Many things impact a body's absorption or utilization of vitamin D. Body composition, diet, vitamin A, vitamin K, magnesium, and zinc, and the synthetic forms of whatever those are, right? But here's the thing. Oh, so can impaired pancreatic function. Right? But here's the thing. It's something you would never think about and never even know to ask and never have any assurances on. The chemical delivery system of that synthetic matters. And what I mean by that is that if it's a water-soluble microencapsulized form versus a water-soluble micellized form, whatever that is, versus an oil based form versus an ethanol-based form, it can affect bioutilization by 2 to 5 times. Tufts did a study of about 320 dogs, fed 40 different diets, including 40 different commercial diets and homemade, and found that all of them provided insufficient levels of vitamin D by about a third. Get your dog's vitamin D levels tested. BDI lab is one that will do it from a blood draw. Copper. Inaugural Female Summit has to talk about copper. Dr. Sharon Center and her working group at Cornell are at the center of this issue around copper-associated hepatopathy. She called it an avoidable and tragic, nutritionally provoked canine illness that stems from a 1997 change by AFCO to highly bioavailable copper chelates that exceed the physiologic tolerance for many healthy dogs. What's a copper chelate? Right? Natural copper is found like in oysters and beef liver. Right? It's got a bioavailability of around 30 to 40%. And dogs, most mammals, unless they're kind of got some genetic weirdness going on, most of them are pretty able to modulate that themselves. Like they eliminate the excess in the stool. Not so for copper chelates. A copper chelate is copper that's bound to either an amino acid or an organic acid. And it becomes really bioavailable. It's got a bioavailability of about 80 to 90%. And it bioaccumulates in the liver, causing an insidious disease with very few symptoms until the situation can be very troublesome. And testing for it can be invasive. And then zinc. So this is the last one here. There are issues. Zinc is involved in so many different processes in the body. Metabolic, immune, it helps protect our gut. Natural zinc has a bioavailability of about 20 to 30%. But when you're deficient, most mammals, they can increase that bioavailability, right? They'll get more out of their food. Synthetic forms there's a big problem around synthetic forms, and it's because AFCO's kind of screwed some things up. So first off, they have a really, really high requirement for zinc in a diet, 20 milligrams per 1,000 kcal. To put that in perspective on a body weight basis, it's about 5 times the recommended daily amount for a man. They do this because they realize that most dogs are eating crap, right? Really low levels of meat, which is a natural source of zinc, and high levels of grains and legumes that have phytates in them, which block the absorption of zinc. So then they go and they approve this wide range of synthetics. We got zinc oxide on one hand and chelated zincs on the other, right? Zinc oxide has a bioavailability of about a big goose egg. So in that diet of crap that uses zinc oxide, our dogs can have zinc deficiencies, right? Contrast that to chelated zinc, right? Chelated zinc has a bioavailability of about 60%, which is 2 to 3 times higher than natural zinc. So when that manufacturer is making a formulation that's going to meet a really high zinc requirement and using chelated zinc, it could potentially mean that our dogs are ingesting too much zinc, and zinc excess can cause an iron deficiency through the way that both of those things use copper. There are metabolic disorders that are associated with both zinc deficiency and zinc excess. You can get your dogs tested from a hair sample at Parsley Pet Dog. Insider tip, not so easy to determine whether or not your food has synthetics in it because there are fortified ingredients. And the big one to look for, in my opinion, is dried yeast or nutritional yeast or blah, blah, blah yeast, right? It is often formulated with or fortified with things like copper, B vitamins, and other things. You're going to have to pull that information out of your manufacturer if you're buying a commercial product. Cod liver oil can be a source of synthetic or can be fortified with vitamin D. So you're going to want to ask your manufacturer about that one. And fish oil, a little bit of fish oil has, a little bit of vitamin E in fish oil to prevent acidity is fine. I'm talking about a nutritionally significant level of vitamin E. If you're on the lookout for synthetics, that would be a place to ask. Now I have naturally occurring toxins. It's the last one. So these are aflatoxins, endotoxins, and glycoalkaloids, right? Aflatoxin is the most potent naturally occurring human carcinogen and a public health hazard due to its association with liver cancer. 100,000 humans get liver cancer from aflatoxin every year. Aflatoxin at high levels also causes aflatoxicosis with a 40% mortality rate. It is the number 2 reason for pet food recalls, and 100% of those recalls are kibble. Glycoalkaloids are recognized by the World Health Organization as one of the top naturally occurring human toxins, right? What are they? They're produced on nightshade plants in response to environmental stress like UV light, bruising insects. They are considered to be this toxic when you have exposure. It's considered to be widely unreported. Why? Because it can look like mild GI distress. But here's the thing, there is a very small window between what will cause mild or moderate GI distress and what will cause severe distress and even fatality. And these things bioaccumulate. New York State Department of Agriculture several years ago looked at commercial pet foods and found several that had concerning levels of glycoalkaloids in them that contained potato. And it's because they're using the waste products of potato, right? Sprouts and peels, which are the highest source of glycoalkaloids, and endotoxins. So an endotoxin, we found out in some research this year, in humans, endotoxin can block a white fat cell's ability to transform into a more metabolically active brown fat cell, which would drive weight loss. What are endotoxins? They are complex little fat and sugar molecules that exist inside cells of gram-negative bacteria. A cell of gram-negative bacteria will hold 2 million endotoxins. When that cell replicates, right, 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, it releases little bits of endotoxin. When that cell dies, it releases all that endotoxin. At least that's an endotoxin in our gut, as I mentioned earlier, because we got some gram-negative bacteria living there. But think about this for 1 minute. If you've got a cell of salmonella, one cell salmonella sitting on a piece of root temperature chicken. In about 6 to 12 hours, that's going to replicate to about 1 million cells. And then you're going to cook, or you're going to render, or you're going to ingest that chicken. And all 1 million cells of salmonella will die, and they'll release 2 trillion endotoxin molecules. An endotoxin at unmanageable levels initiates and perpetuates damage to and diseases of the gut, brain, liver, kidney. It disrupts metabolic processes, cardiovascular processes, immune processes. Conditions around endotoxin are made worse by imbalanced feeding, in particular poor protein nutrition and high saturated fat diets, just like you find at crab. And rendered ingredients are definitely a source of this toxin. Endotoxin in the liver, or endotoxin in the body is brought to the liver where it's inactivated. Too much endotoxin in the liver is going to damage the liver, but more importantly, when the level of endotoxin in the liver is normal, another substance can interact with it to damage the liver, and that other substance doesn't have to be a toxin. Guess what? Too much vitamin A, too much iron, and too much copper can do the trick. And in some random testing by the Missouri Department of Agriculture, they found pet foods with iron levels 2,000% over minimum and copper levels 700% over minimum. So that's kind of the crap side of discussion. Now, let's build a better bowl, right? Let's build a better bowl for our metabolic health. And today I have a few mantras, but one of them is this one. The more rigidity with which I approach pet food, the more humble pie I must eat. So I'm just going to share with you where I start. You can pick and choose what you like out of it and throw it all away if it doesn't resonate with you. But I think we can all agree that the first step is replacing as much ultra-processed crap with real whole foods as our budget allows, right? So for me, that starts with lean, whole quality proteins. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot talking about proteins because I think we kind of all agree about this stuff. But for me, I like 50 to 60% by weight of what is in the bowl to be lean, whole quality protein. I like organs in a 5-to-1 ratio of muscle to organ, so another 10 to 12%. And I love eggs. Eggs are, they've got some really great disease-fighting carotenoids in them, but they're loaded with choline. And choline helps remove cholesterol from the liver. It's responsible for the structural integrity and signaling of every cell in the body. So choline is awesome. Deficiencies can cause, is associated with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, chronic pancreatitis, which can put a body at risk for kidney disease, diabetes. So it's super important to get your choline. I like eggshells as a source of calcium. This is what I reach for, but a lot of people reach for bone. I like them because there's that little shell that's rich in glycosamine or glycans and joints and connective. That supports connective tissues. So the best diets, right, from around the world relate their benefits to the richness and diversity of polyphenols, antioxidants, and fiber that come from plants. These things together feed those good guys in our gut, right? Help them make those short-chain fatty acids, protect the lining of our gut, and calm down our immune system and support really great cellular signaling. For me, plants make up about 15 to 30% by weight of what's in a bowl. But that may sound like a lot, but calorically, if you choose the right things, you're talking about 3% to 5% of the calories. So I'm going to share some compounds that I like and where you can find them, right, for metabolic health. First up is alpha-lipoic acid. It's an antioxidant. It supports the manufacturing inside the body of glutathione, which is that mother antioxidant. It amps up the power of polyphenols. It also helps protect our endothelial cells, reduce blood sugar, reduce blood pressure. I love quercetin. It is a polyphenol found in a wider range of fruits and vegetables. It can prevent the formation of ages in the body, right? Reduce reduce blood glucose and triglycerides. It also scavenges free radicals out of our pancreas, preventing that, reduces the oxidative damage in our liver, supports glycogen storage in our muscles, protects the neurons of our small intestine and our kidneys. So really great stuff there. I3C is actually a compound that occurs when you chop vegetables, right? And it can help prevent the formation of fat, basically by increasing thermogenesis, that temperature at which our metabolism runs. I like camphorol. It's another polyphenol, and it targets our nerves, our heart, our eyes, and the beta cells of our pancreas, basically preventing them from damage caused by ages and hyperglycemia. And chlorogenic acid is super. It's found in a wide array of fruits and veggies. It's a polyphenol. It again helps prevent insulin resistance, weight gain, protects our endothelial cells, and can help lower our free fatty acids and triglycerides. It does some of these benefits that you see up here basically by preventing oxidative stress of our fat tissues. And then lastly, I have sulforaphane. And that is like I3C, it's created when we chop things. It helps repair pancreatic tissue, can help remove endotoxins from our bloodstream, and increases bacteroidetes, those good guys in our gut. And lastly, as a recipe for putting it all together. So this one is designed to be energetically cooling. It's high protein, moderate fat, low carb. It's got a really good copper level, right? That's pretty much close to the minimum that you can get there. You might be curious about the choice of fats. So either your avocado oil or your olive oil, that's going to give you your 5-to-1 ratio, or the fish oil is going to give you the 1-to-1. Avocado and olive oil are monounsaturated fatty acids, omega-9s, so they help protect our beta cells in our pancreas and help with vitamin D utilization. So you might want to consider rotating that. And other benefits up there, but and you might look at this and say, hey, Amy, it's got a lot of plants in it, right? Yeah, it does. About 30% by weight is a plant, but on a calorie basis, 54%, I think it is, of what's in that is of the calories in the bowl is protein. 43 is fat. 3% is net carbs, and starch is only 1. Right? So here's a recipe, right, to getting at that oniony root of good nutrition, your dog's metabolic health, and no more small hits. just a quick personal note. That's me and Grace, right? She's one of the reasons why I'm here today. And, you know, I would have laid down in front of a tray to get more time with her, right? So if you connect with that, either now or ever in the future, I am here. You are not alone, right?